Dragon Age Inquisition is one of my favourite games of all time. I love everything about this game, from the compelling hero's journey, to the roster of lovable characters, to making the Inquisitor my very own unique protagonist. I find that few games can really compare to the experiences and tremendous moments that Inquisition provides. And not to mention the Trespasser DLC, which revealed the true intention of the game's villain and paved the story forward for future titles. I think it's rather telling how good this game is, considering we're still talking about it nearly 6 years later after launch, discovering new theories and mysteries hidden deep within the lore. Heck, if Dragon Age Inquisition was just a mediocre experience, I don't think that I would have a YouTube channel today with thousands of recurring views weekly just talking about this game and where the story may go since the game's ending. However, as the Inquisition fanboy I am, there is still something critical that I feel is necessary to discuss regarding Dragon Age Inquisition's original marketing demos and the expectations they set for the finished game. You see, following up to the launch of Dragon Age Inquisition, I used to obsessively re-watch the original gameplay demo shown at PAX Prime 2013. At the time, the game was in its pre-alpha build. However, there were so many impressive features and dynamics showing just a glimpse of what we'd come to expect once we got our hands on the official game. In retrospect, these promises and amazing features were scrapped before the finished project released. Now, this video is not meant to be a negative outlook poking holes at BioWare's effort, but instead an investigation and critique into BioWare's game design, more specifically the cuts the developers made tackling Inquisition's complicated release, and how they have learned since that. For the uninitiated, Dragon Age Inquisition released in November 2014, just a month after the next generation of consoles shipped. As Inquisition was jammed in between two console generations, it was designed to ship on both the previous generation of consoles, being the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, and the current generation at the time, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. In order for the game to predominantly run on the lower spec consoles, many gameplay cuts, downgrades and setbacks were made to the final project. To put the record straight, I'm not talking about conceptual ideas in pre-production that were originally drafted out for the game, things that Patrick Weeks and David Gader have gone on to talk about, like the architect making somewhat of a cameo appearance in an original Here Lies the Abyss alternative questline, or the hero of Ferelden, Hawk and the Inquisitor meeting up in a potential drafted out prologue. Of course, there were plenty of other ideas, concepts and story threads that were canned and reworked because the developers had better and frankly more relevant plans for the game. No, I'm not talking about any of those. I'm actually talking about gameplay features and mechanics that were incorporated and designed into the vertical slice demo that was later shown off at PAX Prime 2013 and that were then removed just before the game launched. Now, I would like to point out that the gameplay I'm going to show was alpha footage and the developers made sure that we all understood that it could easily change. Nobody lied to us about the footage we're about to see, and it not being in the official game. If anything, it just shows that BioWare was so eager to show off the next Dragon Age game, and that perhaps that eagerness was the biggest detriment to the project. Now, I do have the full 40-minute PAX gameplay demo linked in the description down below if you would like to watch it fully, but without further ado, I'm going to be revealing the Dragon Age Inquisition we almost got. Setting the scene, this demo starts with a significant cut. Originally, Dragon Age Inquisition would have featured stunning party member cutscenes when entering new areas for the first time. We see Varric, Cassandra and Vivienne discussing how prepared they are since the Inquisition's formation. Varric banters that he's outnumbered by the ladies once more. Now, we can assume that these dynamic banter cutscenes based on your party members were later replaced with Scout Harding's area report. Something that we noticed within these cutscenes is that the models and textures for the characters and armors look very different. Cassandra has a more angled facial structure, like her original concept art, and the Inquisitor's armor and textures don't exactly exist in the final game. I remember distinctively attempting to recreate this look when the game shipped 1,000 times over. However, no fabrics in the game have this orange texture other than dragon webbing, but it doesn't really look like this. Helmets also appear in conversations, which is kind of a huge pet peeve of mine. It's not a big deal, but I do like the idea of having helmets in conversations, and there's still no mods to fix that, which is kind of unfortunate. However, they did add this feature in Mass Effect Andromeda, so maybe we'll see it make a comeback in the future. In general, this demo showed that there was going to be a lot more cutscenes when entering new areas, in party banter, and for minor conversations for smaller characters. Now, upon inspecting the gameplay, we can see the camera's placement was significantly adjusted. The demo has a third-person feel, whereas the game ended up with a more pulled-back camera, probably to suit the tactical camera for combat, or maybe just to have a more exploration approach. Now, fortunately, there are mods that I do download to fix this issue, but I do very much prefer this third-person feel to the game. Just allows me to feel more immersed in my character. We can see that the UI has evolved since this demo. There used to be this Skyrim-esque navigation compass that was replaced with the iconic Dragon Edge radar. I do like the navigational compass because it alludes to that there is more to explore in this world, and the radar isn't exactly the easiest thing to use for exploration. We can also see that the party member icons on the side are different, but that's just a nitpick. Again, this was pre-alpha footage. Now, when it comes to the combat, this is more or less the same. However, it does seem more reactive and heftier in the demo. This is more likely because the camera is more zoomed into the action. There are some tweaks though. The enemies react more to the Inquisitor's attacks. They stumble, flail, and even attempt to run away, as opposed to just taking the damage and then attacking you back like a typical bot. However, each of these cuts do seem kind of minor, at least in my opinion. They do change the game a fair amount, adding more immersion to the overall experience of playing as the Inquisitor, but even so, we haven't talked about the most obvious and I would say upsetting cut when watching the gameplay demo, and that regards the entirety of the Crestwood map. This area has been dramatically reduced in the final game. In this demo, the Inquisitor is given a conflict, which surrounds the entirety of Crestwood's narrative. One of the Inquisition soldiers asks the player, how does the Inquisitor want to handle their army's movements throughout the area? Of course, Crestwood is under attack by an assortment of Red Templars and demons. The Inquisitor has many decisions they can make. They can send the Inquisition army to save the town of Crestwood, they can lead the soldiers to tend the nearby wounded, or they can bolster every single Inquisition soldier to the keep, leaving both the wounded and the town of Crestwood under attack. Each choice had a consequence, and both Mike Laidlaw and Mark Darrah spoke on having multiple ways to approach this situation. For instance, in the demo scenario, the Inquisitor decides to leave the town while it's under siege. Instead, they find a secret entrance towards the keep. Using anti-even fire, they burn the invaders' boats, which would prevent the Red Templars from escaping after they've attacked Crestwood. This was just one of the many combat tactical choices you could make throughout your journey. In the demo, the Inquisition takes the keep and they head back to the ransacked town, which is filled with newly fresh corpses. A dynamic cutscene of Varric mourning the dead plays out, with Cassandra somewhat embracing him. This adds emotional impact and weight to the decision that the Inquisitor just made, showing that if you chose a different option, this scene could have played out completely differently. And this was just one side quest line in Crestwood, one of the minor areas of the entire game. The demo ends with the developers reiterating the tactical and dynamic approaches when showing the Inquisition taking over another keep at the western approach. According to Mark Darrah, you could weaken enemy defenses by doing things like drawing out the troops or poisoning their wells. Then once you claimed the keep for yourself, you would get a quest called This Water Tastes Funny, in which your keep's well was poisoned, and then you would then have to go find fresh water for the keep. The keeps themselves were originally designed to have a lot more influence and reactivity throughout the world. Once captured, the Inquisitor could choose a dynamic choice for the keep's overall goal if you had enough Inquisition agents. Originally, you were going to use your agents as a currency to upgrade your keep. The keep could be specialized based on your Inquisitor's advisors and the amount of agents you had. You could choose to run your keep as a military outpost, boosting fortifications, or it could be a keep of espionage and secrets for information gathering, or you could make it a keep of connections and merchants for diplomatic purposes. Each different specialty had a different advantage and aesthetic to suit its purpose, which in turn added more choices and role-playing values for making the Inquisition your very own army, having a say in which aspects you would like to grow in. This sums up the majority of the cuts made since this demo. I will say that it is unfortunate seeing these unfinished features that shaped the game in a completely different direction, that inevitably couldn't make it into the finished project. But I do think it's wrong to attempt to pin the blame of this cut content on anyone because the developers were tackling a console generation shift and they wanted everyone who liked Dragon Age to have the opportunity to play this game without having to go and fork out for a new console. Can you really blame BioWare for trying to be as inclusive to their fanbase as possible? Now perhaps many of these features may be designed into a future title since the developers wanted them so much in Inquisition, and speaking of the future title, at least the next Dragon Age game won't be coming out in between a console generation. It is being designed strictly for the next generation, so there shouldn't be any console setbacks and limitations. If anything, the game is going to have way more features while looking even more beautiful. Even still, when Dragon Age 4 does eventually get a gameplay reveal, don't set your expectations in stone based on that reveal. The finished project will look very different. These days, gameplay previews aren't always accurate, and that's just a dilemma of the entire games industry, not just EA and BioWare. Wrapping up on a positive note, BioWare have learned from these experiences and they're approaching Dragon Age 4 with a show don't tell strategy. They will be proceeding with caution when marketing and revealing the next Dragon Age game, and that may play a part in why we haven't seen and won't see anything official gameplay wise for a while. I don't think that I could end on a better note than narrative director John Epler's message about Inquisition's development. John said a good 90% of bad decisions are in fact the best decisions at the time. Game development is all about making the best decisions you can at the time with the resources you have. A lot of the stuff you thought was weird or awkward came down to a gut call of this is the best decision I can make this and I trust it's good enough. Sometimes we're right, sometimes not. BioWare decided to make these cuts to Inquisition because they realized it was the right thing to do for the entire project and mainly for the fans, so every single type of player could play this game. Even so, perhaps they felt they couldn't deliver on the entirety of these features reaching their full capacity, or perhaps they wanted a change of direction. They believe these decisions were made for the greater good of the game and I commend them for that. Dragon Age Inquisition is an incredible RPG with tons of personality. Although the game had some minor setbacks with the fair amount of content that was cut, the game is just as amazing without those initial features. And like I said, perhaps we'll see these mechanics in the next game. And if not, then at least it has been a learning experience for BioWare that they can utilize for the development of Dragon Age 4. In any regard, let me know your thoughts down below on this gameplay demo relating to the finished game. On top of that, don't forget to check out my latest news video where I delved into many news updates in April and May. It's a super exciting video and I recommend you giving it a watch if you haven't already. But until the next one guys, I have been Jackdaw and I should go. Whoa, whoa, whoa.